we just have had this committee for a long time, and we focus on the blue-nosed caribou herds, but the committee can also use this as another place to look at other species of common concern between all 6 of the boards, or in between 2 or 3 boards, depending on the transboundary implications of the particular species. But for the most part, we focused on the 3 blue-nose herds, which are the Cape Bathurst, blue-nose east, and blue-nose west herds.
So why are you particularly focused on those 3 herds?
Like I said, it's a long-standing group that has worked together to look at management of that herd. It was called the blue nose herds because at one time it was all just considered one herd. There was some genetics work done back in the 90s, and they're now split into these 3 separate herds: Cape Bathurst, blue nose west, and blue nose east. There's also another herd on the Tuck Peninsula that is a separate herd, but that's not included in the Taking Care of Caribou Management Plan that the ACCWM drafted and has provided to the GNWT and the Government of Nunavut as guidance for management for those 3 herds.
I guess I was asking in part because obviously there are other shared herds, and within your board's jurisdiction you have other herds that are shared. So why aren't they part of the whole structure of the committee?
There are other committees for other herds. There's the Bathurst Caribou Advisory Committee that deals with specifically with the Bathurst herd. There's the Beverly Kaministiquia Caribou Management Board that deals with those herds. The Porcupine Caribou has the Porcupine Caribou Management Board. So this board, or this group, takes care of those 3 herds that don't already have a management body in place.
So at some point in the future, would it be useful, do you think, to amalgamate some of these together so that you have more of a sort of complete structure that can look after all the different herds?
No, I don't believe that'll happen. The Porcupine Caribou Management Board, that stems through land claim agreements. This is a long-standing committee, the ACCWM and the others. We're still dealing with in the Beverly Kaministiquia board. That's a board that's in place through 4 separate jurisdictions: Saskatchewan, Manitoba, GNWT, and the Government of Nunavut. There's MOUs that are in place for those. It might make sense to some to put it all together to have, it's all barren ground caribou, so they should all be managed the same. But there's so many different players in place that sometimes it's more simple to have these separate boards. There are 6 member boards on the ACCWM, but that's representing 17 plus communities. So it's a lot just to deal with those 3 herds, to make sure that you're conducting good community consultation and engagement every year, and collecting good community information and good science to then discuss the current year herd status and the associated management actions.
Several items in your mandate for the committee talk about discussion. There's discussion on total allowable harvests, discussion on calving ground protection, for instance. So what do you hope results from the discussions that the board has?
So the ACCWM meets annually in November at their annual status meeting, where they receive information from scientists and from community members from those 17 communities that I mentioned earlier. They use that information to determine the status of the herd. So how well is the herd doing, and where do they fit in the management scheme that is set up in the Taking Care of Caribou Management Plan. depending on the herd status, there are associated management actions with those. You mentioned total allowable harvest. That's one of that's found under harvest. That's one of the 5 categories that has management actions associated with it. And so there is, with that herd status, there's the management action. If the member boards are considering implementing a total allowable harvest, the ACCWM just recommends that that should be done. Then each of those member boards have their own land claim process that they have to follow in order to determine whether a total allowable harvest will be implemented.
When each region has so much at stake, with a lot of the herds obviously in decline at the moment, and the difficulties attendant on that with people who rely on those herds, how difficult are the discussions in the committee?
They're not terribly difficult discussions because they're more at a high level. The discussions that are most difficult is determining what herd status we're at. And like I said, once that herd status is determined, there's the associated management actions. The difficult discussions like total allowable harvest and protection of calving grounds, those actually happen at the member board table and in the individual regions, and not at the ACCWM table. Once those decisions are made there, of course, they're shared with everybody, but they're regional-based discussions. The ACCWM discussion focuses on the herd status and the subsequent action plans that come out. And so it's the discussions focus on the information that we're given by the scientists and by the community members themselves. So we do our best to ensure that we have a balanced approach in making those decisions, and we often have and encourage having community members at our meetings. So the discussions aren't particularly difficult. It's just making, it's making sure that we're giving due, we're looking at each of the pieces of information in a balanced manner and taking it all into consideration and doing what's best for the herd. So I guess that's maybe the most difficult, is making sure that we have the right herd status. And so you usually find that out a year later to see if you did it right or not.